that's enough of that. Good morning, or early afternoon, as it is. My body ailing has not been waking up at what anyone would probably term morning. But then I've been overjoyed to be awake and exploring what I was reading about this morning, which, it's funny, it's part and parcel to probably the longest, rootin' tootin'est, strongest, what's the word, argument, irritation, confusion, question for God. Really, for God. And it was all about, okay, well, so a sovereign God who created all things, has impressed all things with his grand design, with his golden triangles, with his golden ratios, and perfect ellipses, and all this, and blah blah blah, and so forth. Also is in control, and therefore his will enacted or permitted by one means or another all the calamity in the world, all the wickedness, and then that sort of stage one, but actually the even more troubling or harder for me to grapple with part was evil itself, was sin itself, was things that fly in the face of his nature and fly in the face of his nature as revealed in our consciences too. We're like, see things that truly are wicked. So then we are called to either reprogram and become relativists and go, oh, okay, well, I guess nothing is good and bad because this is permitted, or just go, hey, wait, you're God, right? Why can't you snap your fingers and just teach us all? If this is all maybe a big object lesson, this is all if there's a light at the end of this tunnel, God, can't you just snap your fingers and have us all understand these things with all the depth of purpose? And someone said to me once, and I found this kind of annoying, but also sort of true. They were like, well, maybe he has. Maybe he is. And I was like, yeah, I guess. Because then you get in your whole relative theories of time thing, and then you're like, oh yeah, well, humph. So the biblical look-see for this, though, is, and then I've heard people kind of stumble the other way to me, which is like, oh, well, God doesn't do bad things. God just does, he just does good, and he'll work bad things to his advantage. But the Bible is pretty clear. Now, God does all things to the glory of his name, and that includes both calamity and blessing, affliction and gifts. Job has some great quotes about this. Job says, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord," which is a hard thing to say in times of affliction. And following up after that, in all this, Job did not sin or charge God with wrong. Deuteronomy 32:39. This is God quote. "There is no God beside me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. And there is none that can deliver out of my hand." That's pretty powerful. Archie's coming in. Whew. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In Psalms, do you need help, Buzz? Okay. In Psalms, he says, 105:16, he summoned a famine on the land and broke all supply of bread. Mark 4:41, even the wind and the sea obey him. In Psalms as well, he makes his winds flow and the waters flow. Wind blow and waters flow. Fire and hail, snow and mist, stormy wind fulfilling his word. Basically, again and again, you're going to run across Oh, Isaiah 45:7. I form light and create darkness. I make well-being and create calamity. I am the Lord who does all these. Job 42:2 again. I know that you can do all things and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. And it really, the Bible also just destroys any element of chance, any notion we may have of chance. Proverbs 16:33. The lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. Now, this is some wild stuff because it really challenges you to like fully invest and explore, and for me, believe the genuine sovereignty of the Lord. You know what I mean? Of God, that it's not just like he's not like a sit back, hold his belly and smile God, but he's a God who's literally involved in all in the intricacies and the methods and ways and happenings of all things, good and bad, and all things to his glory. But then let's go ahead and run over to, I think, probably the best example of all to counteract the person in me who says, now first of all, you can just look at it even from that yin-yang perspective if you'd like, that like basically the why does sin exist, and why are moral evils even allowed then to be perpetrated? Why is there even a possibility of doing things against God's desires, you know, or his professed desires? And actually, the more I've gotten, the older I've gotten. I mean, he can use all things. Like, for example, sorry, to quote Jonathan Edwards, not the political candidate. The crucifying of Christ was a great sin, and as man committed it, it was exceedingly hateful and highly provoking to God. Yet upon many great considerations, it was the will of God that it should be done. In Acts 4:27-28, truly in the city they were gathered together against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, along with the Gentiles and the people of Israel, to do whatever your hand and your plan had predestined to take place. Now, and that was the thing that always really bothered me. It was like, wait, so why would he not only allow, why would he even create a world in which we would be able to violate his laws and turn our cheeks against him and turn our hands to our own business? Well, to a degree, I've come to understand that we don't. Everything we do, he calls us to see that everything we do is actually under his governance, whether good or bad. Now, he calls us to accept that, you know, and in accepting that and accepting his sovereignty is really part of what his promise of salvation brings. And again, also in that yin-yang way, like for knowing who we are and what we are as human beings, and the way the human being's minds works is, again, how much greater is a period of blessing after a period of affliction, and how much more clear do we see things after suffering. So for all my complaints that he just was not teaching us in the most expedient way, I frustratingly have had to come to accept that, to quote George MacDonald, God's fingers can touch nothing but to mold it into loveliness. And how much greater for his fingers to mold into loveliness creatures of darkness and filth, you know, and to use the feckless and the weak and the muddled to accomplish glorious purposes. And how much greater do we appreciate it the lower we are to be raised up higher, you know? So in a way, the whole lesson plan is actually quite clever. Thanks, God. Humph.